So, first of all, let's talk about Joe Biden real quick. And I know some
Who?
of us are like, really? That's in the
Who?
past. Out. It matters. It matters a lot. But what's going on is these audio recordings from his ghostwriter sessions um, are now available. I don't have full access to all of it. I don't know if any of us do, but Congress does. And it's roughly about 70 hours of audio, over 100 pages of transcripts released after a federal judge dissolved an injunction blocking their publication. And the recordings were made while Biden worked with ghostwriter Mark Zwanitzer on his memoir. And understand, this was late 2016, early 2017. So this is roughly 4 years before he took office as president of the United States. And in these recordings, there's a couple of things going on. There are indications that the mental instability that he was experiencing, that we saw and was finally being made public through the media, those mental instabilities were already in existence 4 years before he even took office as president. Secondly, and this is, I think, even more critical, because it's not about Biden as much as it is about his ideology, the deep state that surrounds him, is the classified data angle on this. In those recordings, and I put on, by the way, at douglasvgibbs.com, because someone during a show yesterday I was talking to asked, well, it was Alan. As a matter of fact, Alan Meyer says, hey, man, do you have a list of the mental lapses by Joe Biden in those recordings? So I looked them up, and I have 7 in particular. And you can check them out at douglasvgibbs.com. But to get back to my original point, the classified information, that to me is even a bigger deal. And, he says in the recordings things like, oh, next thing I have here is, well, this is classified. Or some of this may be classified, so be careful. And the reason why that's important is because when the questions about his handling of classified documents in his garage, in his offices, in his basement, when that came up, we basically were told it was an inadvertent mishandling. He didn't realize. Yet we have in these recordings and other times him boasting that officials never knew he had those documents, and him mentioning 4 years before he took office as president about having these documents, and even talking about these classified things with his ghostwriter. Now, Special Counsel Robert Hur had the recordings. He saw all of this, but he played it down. He decided not to prosecute. And what did he say? Now, remember, once again, these recordings are 4 years before he took office. And we were told that he was fine. But and here's a clue as to what we were in for when it came to his mental capacity. Robert Hur, Special Counsel Robert Hur, said that he was not going to prosecute because a jury would view Biden with sympathy because he was a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Realize, once again, these recordings took place 7 years before Special Counsel Hur made that conclusion, and 4 years before he took office, before Biden took office. So now we have this oversight project, which has obtained the recordings. And one of the notes that I read was the silence of the redactions loudly demonstrates that Biden knowingly and willfully disclosed classified information to his ghostwriter. And this is multiple instances of him disclosing classified data, information, or disclosing that he had knowingly this classified data. Meanwhile, Jack Smith was aggressively pursuing Donald Trump for similar allegations with no evidence. So the department
And
initially,
wait. Let's just make it really clear. Jack Smith never had an authority to investigate anyone.
well, no,
What
he
he was
didn't.
doing before is working for a George Soros court with a
Hmm.
WC, the World, whatever, the World Constitutional Court, whatever they call this, the ICC, International Something Court.
Right,
And he was doing investigations for political purposes on the behalf of George Soros, gets falsely appointed and gets subpoena power that he was never, the Senate
right.
never
Well,
appointed him,
and
was
all of that's
never
true.
named.
All of
So
that's true.
the guy had no legitimacy in any way, shape, or form. And if he had to go in front of a Senate confirmation hearing, if you look at his actual background and what he was doing with the ICC and the Soros courts, the guy should have been thrown in jail before he ever set foot back in the United States. So Jack Smith is definitely a villain here.
Well,
So
sure,
just to
and
throw that
and
out
it
there.
reminds me of childhood, right? You got you got your brother and sister, and you just got caught red-handed as a child. What do you do? Yeah, but they did this. That's what it was.
Well,
You
it's worse. It's worse than that. And I'm going to
okay,
I pulled up a quote for you
okay,
about Biden's legitimacy, and this was a interview done, I believe, 2017 between Stephen Colbert and Barack Obama. And I'm just going to read this quote
okay.
from Obama. I said this before. People would ask me, knowing what you know now, do you wish you had a third term? Obama says, and I used to say, you know what? If I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement and my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that because I found the work fascinating. I mean, I write about that even on my worst days. I found puzzling out, these big, complicated, difficult issues, especially if you were working with some great people, to be professionally really satisfying. But I do not miss having to wear a tie every day. It's exactly what he
I've heard
said.
that one a number of times. Yeah. Hmm.
They said that on the air,
Hmm.
and this speaks to the Biden competency.
Sure.
Was he Obama's third term puppet? And I think we're going to find out that it absolutely was the case. Obama was probably a puppet himself. I mean, these
Right.
guys there are puppet masters above both all of those. But Obama liked to make the political decisions and do the speeches. He loved the grandiose. The man was a brilliant orator. You have to give him credit for that. He
Yeah.
was a
And
very
with
good
Biden, that's
speaker.
what the auto pin was all about. Remove the
There's a
middleman, sign it ourselves.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the auto pen because you did a little bit of that on your radio show, which I caught yesterday.
Yeah, and Rich X in the chat room also asked is an auto pin legal and constitutional?
Well,
And
the Constitution doesn't address that he actually has to sign a pardon. That doesn't actually say that the president has to sign a pardon, just says the president can pardon.
right,
So there's that. Um, Modern
but
tradition
but
said
but did the president pardon if it wasn't his signature?
did he know was the process in place?
Mhm.
Did he actually have the mental capabilities of saying, okay, this person, might have done some bad things. That's what a pardon's supposed to
And I
be.
get the auto pin. I mean, because my daughter one time wrote a letter to her Congress critter. At the time, it was Sonny Bono's ex. What's her name? Mary Bono.
Fair.
Yeah, Mac. Mary Bono Mac. And my daughter got back this letter from Congress critter Mary Bono Mac, and she was very excited, and it's framed. And I got to looking closely at the signature, and the signature definitely wasn't a pin signature. It was printed, and it was a form letter. And whether it was an auto pin or just a something that they have in the computer that they put on there or whatever, Mary Bonomac didn't actually sign that letter. And I get it. That's kind of what the auto pin was for. There are going to be times where you've got 100,000 things to sign and no man is capable. I get it. But when it comes to something that is legal, official, it needs to be the original signature.
Okay.
Regardless of what the Constitution says, that's just common sense. Go ahead, sir.
So real quick, Doug, what you want me to pull it up in my pocket Constitution, or are you going to do it from memory? Because you're pretty good at this stuff.
What's the
What does
question?
the Constitution actually say about the presidential pardon? Verbatim, word for word. Do you want to
That
read
he
that, or
has, yeah, I don't know verbatim for word to word, but it does not say that anything has to be signed.
Well, yeah, but give me the exact section. I'll pull it up right now. I've got it obviously in my hand. I've got my
Should be
first pocket
should be
constitution.
Article 2. It's probably Article 2, Section 2, I would think. I'm gonna pull it up right now.
I should have had it highlighted. Get that there. And the question I'm going to ask Doug here, people, and this is really important, and I asked him this on his radio show in the chat yesterday, but I want to hear him address it in much more
Article 2,
depth.
Section 2, first paragraph, last part of it.
Yeah. And read it to us, Doug.
All right, let's see. And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. And that, except in cases of impeachment, is critical actually, because there were worries that he would use it for political reasons,
The
and
most
that's why they
important,
added that.
the most important word here, and I don't think enough people are talking about this, and I want you to really go into this,
Mhm.
is the word offenses. So read it one more time.
And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the
Done.
United States.
Offenses are specific crimes. It didn't say he had the ability to pardon people. What the Otter Pen did was it pardoned people, gave blanket pardons for anything that happened during a 10-year period and didn't mention offenses. The president does not have the power to pardon people. He has the power to pardon particular offenses,
Mm-hmm.
which means you have to name the specific crimes. Those crimes have to have been charged. You cannot give a blanket pardon. That is my constitutional interpretation. Therefore, I mean, this needs to be adjudicated whether a president can just give someone a blanket pardon, said, "Hey, you gave money to my campaign, you get a blank check." That is not what the founders intended. It was intended, you know, for specific crimes or offenses.
Well,
And
and that was understood. This is a recent development when it comes to pardons. I don't know of any before the one Ford gave to Nixon. If there were that were blankets, I don't know of it. The first blanket pardon I know of is the one that Ford gave Nixon, and it was pretty broad, and that was the precedent they were using. But you're right when it comes to the legal definition of the word offense. And while you were talking, I looked it up just to make sure I had it right in my head and I could use the proper language. It is an act or omission that violates criminal law and is punishable by the government. An act or omission. In other words, you didn't do something and it created a crime. But
it doesn't say you get a 10-year period where no matter what you do, you could
yeah,
go in
the
a
pardon
crime
is
wave.
for the crime, not the person.
Exactly. And to me, that's the issue. Look, the auto pen's legitimate beef. That's fine, and I get the argument, and I know why Trump is soft pedaling and stuff like that. And it's crystal clear that the Dems actually get back in power in 2028. They're going to actually throw, they're going to make up new things, create a legion of Jack Smiths, and come after every single Trump ally. And Trump wants to, reserve the power to protect his political allies. And they're probably in his ear saying, "Hey, can you do the same thing?" I get that reluctance because this is political warfare. And if they ever get back in power again, well, it's going to be holy. It's going to be worse than holy war. You know what they're going to bring at us. We already saw what they did in January 6th. Multiply of people that just happen to be wrong place, wrong time. And they decided to completely change the entire legal code. So the entire DOJ and the FBI had a bunch of people that, grandmas who just stayed within the velvet ropes. That's just the starting point of what they'll do in 2028 if they get power back, which means you people better show up at the polls in 2026 and 2028. No matter how mad you are about the war in Iran or the fact that inflation hasn't been defeated or anything like that. Although inflation is better, by the way. Forget the disinformation on that. This is a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
This whole ability to blanket pardon a person. And that's when we start getting into plenipotentiary power. And we never gave the president of the United States plenipotentiary power.
Well,
That's a
and you
that's the power of a monarch. Hamilton would have been happy to give the president that power. That's not in the Constitution that Doug just read to you.
right.
Specific crimes can be pardoned. That's it.
Well, and you just kind of took a backyard path into Anthony Fauci because he was pardoned and he was given this broad pardon, and now he's in front of the Senate And he's using the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination 111 times that I was told during his testimony. And it got to the point where he was told just Fifth Amendment for everything. What color's your tie? What color is the carpet? At one point, he actually looked at the carpet like he was thought about answering it, and as one of his team of lawyers, one of those members, leaned forward, tapped him, and said, "No, that too." And then he goes and he went through his canned, response. And and here's the thing, and this is, and I'm a fan of Josh Hawley. No Congress critter is perfect. If there are things about Hawley you don't like, I'm sorry. But generally, I'm a big fan of Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is, I believe, Yale graduate, lawyer, former attorney general for the state of Missouri. And he basically laid it out. So it's not that Fauci doesn't know this or his lawyers don't know this, because Hawley laid it out. And that is that if you have been pardoned, you don't have the opportunity to access your right to remain silent because it might incriminate you. Because the whole point of a pardon is there is no incrimination possible. Therefore, if you cannot self-incriminate by saying something, then you have no Fifth Amendment right. I hate calling it that because the Fifth Amendment doesn't give you the right, but you know what I mean. Because there's no fear of self-incrimination. So you have a choice. If you say nothing, you're in contempt and you're obstructing, or you tell the truth. And if it's not the truth, then now you've perjured yourself, and that pardon doesn't cover those things. It covers specific acts. And we can get into, once again, the argument or the discussion, should I say, about if that broad pardon was, right or wrong or in between. And I agree with you 100% on that, but just set that aside for a second. He got his pardon. Everybody assumes his pardon is regarding A, B, and C, what he has done. But everything since then, A, does not apply, and B, he can still be gone after at the state level. Now, that's what his lawyers are arguing, though. Well, he has the right not to self-incriminate because anything he says in front of Congress could be used against him when the states go after him. That's been their
That's
argument.
that's the point I wanted to jump into, because that pardon was about federal crimes. He can't be
Right,
pardoned federally. That was a presidential pardon.
right.
Uh, Florida was the first to jump into this. Now there are at least 7 other states that I've read, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe more over the last 2 days. I've been a little bit away from the computer, thank
Right.
goodness. Every once in a while, I get to do that.
Every once in a while. Yeah.
Hey, we all need it for our sanity. Um, that's the whole thing about the news cycle today, Doug, is turn off the computer for 2 days and it's a whole new conversation. It changes so fast. Um, and then you
Hmm.
got to scramble to keep back up. And,
Yeah, I
it's
had that
not,
happen to me this morning. Someone texted me, said, "Hey, what do you think of?" And I'm like, I haven't looked at my computer yet today. Holy cow. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, I actually went out for dinner and enjoyed some time with my wife for a few hours. And next thing you know, I got to, no, but the state of Florida, these are state crimes. And what
Right.
Fauci did for the states, I mean, his dishonesty in his own writing. And by the way, this is not a diary. These are journals he was keeping on government software, which is why we have them.
Right.
And he's doing it for the sole purpose of making sure his notes, because he was
How
working for,
stupid, by the way, do you keep these notes be to keep these notes on government servers?
well, that's why Hillary is so brilliant, because she kept everything off a server,
Yeah, somewhere in her bathroom. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, go ahead.
closet, whatever. But these cases are going to have merit because you gave recommendations
Mhm.
to lock down a state, keep kids out of school, keep people from being able to bury their loved ones. I don't know, murder my parents, but that's a side note. We won't get into my personal issues with Fauci because I want a reckoning like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, my parents both died because of the stupid vaccine, and so I take this very personally. Doug met my parents. Thank God for that. They were very good people. Um, Definitely came around to our way of thinking, just not quite quickly enough. And I blame that on Fauci, like you would not believe. I want my reckoning. I want my vengeance. So this is very, very personal to me. And I will not stop on this topic until we get a reckoning. And I'll just leave it at that. so I don't have to make any threats on the air or anything like that. But yeah, I take this really freaking seriously. Um, these state suits can be brought against Fauci. There is no pardon against them. He has
Right.
no Fifth Amendment right to not testify. And I want to segue this into
And
Dr.
the second state, by the way, was Alabama. It went Florida, then Alabama, and then a bunch of other states started joining in.
So I want to segue this into Dr. Deborah Birx, and I'll do that now if I may, and you can
Okay,
get back to
please.
anything else want to
No,
say about
go ahead.
Fauci.
Go
Birx
ahead.
was pretty much the person second most responsible, and not everybody knows her entire background, but she's been making the circuit this week since the Fauci non-testimony. She's been saying, well, we knew a lot of these things, and we should have acted a little bit differently, and she's trying to cover that up. But I'm going to share my screen. I got an article I brought written by a Substacker, and give me 1 second to grab that. All right, here it is. And I'm going to read this whole. I think we need to go through this whole article. Um,
Okay.
and I think it's really going to shed some light on some things. So share screen. Let me know when I'm up.
You're there.
What's it saying?
Matt Pottinger, the
Yeah,
intelligence agent
perfect.
who shut down America.
Yeah, this is Matt Pottinger, the intelligence agent who shut down America, the Manchurian candidate. This is by a guy named Michael P. Senger. He follows me on X, has for years. I follow him. I think he's a wonderful writer. I have not seen anything from him in years. I don't know if he's alive and kicking, but I've been sharing this on Twitter today. But this is really important. We're just going to go through this whole article, and it's Doug. It'll take us 10 minutes, but it's worth it.
Okay.
In 1948, the U.S. House of Representatives received a tip from a man named Whittaker Chambers that several federal officials had been working for the communists. One of these officials was more than happy to appear before the Congress to clear his name, a leading State Department UN representative named Alger Hiss. Most of you who study history know Alger Hiss ended up being a communist spy. The rakish Hiss was exemplary American statesman, polite, pedigreed, well-spoken, and a Harvard man to boot. During the 1945 UN conference, the Chinese delegation had proposed the creation of a new international health organization, the Communist Chinese. After the Chinese failed to get a resolution passed, Hiss recommended establishing the organization by declaration, and the World Health Organization was born. This was always a globalist communist invention, people. In Congress, Hiss coolly denied the allegations and denounced, these are the McCarthy hearings, the allegations, and denounced his deadbeat accuser for the libelous claims. The House came away newly assured that the State Department was in excellent hands, and that would have been John Foster Dulles. And his brother, Alan Dulles, would soon become the head of the CIA. Starting to see a connection here, people? Intelligence, State Department, globalism, World Health Organization. Connect the dots. All right, let me just skip down to a little bit. Around this time, a little-known congressman from California's 12th district named Richard Nixon pressed Chambers for more information. Chambers reluctantly led Tricky Dick to a package of State Department materials he had hidden in a pumpkin patch, including notes in Hiss's own writing. Alger Hiss became the most high-level American official ever convicted in connection with working for communists. So this is the writer, Mr. Senger. He says, to be honest, I barely knew who Matthew Pottinger was. Show of hands in the audience. Anybody ever heard of Matthew Pottinger?
Hmm.
If the name sounds familiar, then you've studied your CIA lore, because his father, I forget his first name, Pottinger, is all over the files that were declassified regarding everything from, oh, I don't know, Watergate, CIA. Um, I think he goes all the way back to JFK assassination, Cuban Missile Crisis. His father was a spook from day one. This kid, Matthew Pottinger, was raised a spook. Make no mistake about that. His father is like in the top 20 list of the most influential CIA spooks from the 60s and 70s. Fair enough?
Go ahead.
I barely knew who Pottinger was until I'd read that he'd appointed Deborah Birx. He appointed Deborah Birx as White House coronavirus response coordinator in her bizarrely self-incriminating memoir, Silent Invasion, which reads like it was written by the Chinese Communist Party itself. There's little information about Pottinger's role in COVID online. Yet Pottinger is portrayed as a leading protagonist in three different pro-lockdown books on America's response to COVID. The Plague Year by the New Yorker's Lawrence Wright, Nightmare Scenario by WAPO's Yasmin Adalib, and Chaos Under Heaven by WAPO's Josh Rogan. Obviously, these are far-left globalist intel community influenced Operation Mockingbird media outlets. Pottinger's singularly outsized role in pushing for alarm, shutdowns, mandates, and science from China in the early months of COVID is extremely well documented. Do you remember reading about Pottinger during 2021, Doug?
No.
Yeah, well, this is the guy who's pushing the whole thing.
Okay.
Pottinger's enormous influence during COVID is especially surprising not only because of his absence from online discussion about these events, but because of who he is.
So nobody heard about his hand for the most part, except for those who dive deep into it.
Yeah, real historians, real journalists. The son of leading Department of Justice official Stanley Pottinger, who was CIA, Matt Pottinger graduated with a degree in Chinese studies in 1998 before going to work as a journalist in China for 7 years, where he reported on topics including the original SARS virus. I'll leave that hanging there because that was a predecessor to COVID. It was a test.
Right.
In 2005, Pottinger unexpectedly left journalism and obtained an age waiver to join the U.S. Marine Corps. So he's a son of a spook, working in China as a Mockingbird media journalist. Now he goes to work for the Marine Corps and goes to serve several tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. Over several tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, Pottinger became a decorated intelligence officer, really, and met General Michael Flynn, who later appointed him to the National Security Council. There's been a lot of fluff about Flynn in the past week, and I'm not going to jump in on that because I've met General Flynn on a couple of occasions, spent actual quality time with him. I want to think he's a really good guy. My BS detector didn't go off in any way, shape, or form, and he came across to me as a man of integrity. I hope I am proven correct. I'd be
Okay.
very upset if Flynn ended up being a bad actor. I don't know, people. I'm not taking a side on Flynn. I want to like the guy. My gut
Well,
instincts.
and presence in something doesn't necessarily mean that someone is a part of it,
Yeah,
if that makes
correlation and
sense.
causation are different. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's we run into this all the time
Mm-hmm.
in our, alternative journalists.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't count how many times I've met with people or got to know people or even considered someone an ally and then later found out not so much and I needed to cut the cord quickly. So I get it. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just because someone is connected to somebody doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. I mean, it happens all the time. And there's people I went to high school with that are absolute jerks, but I went to high school with them. Pottinger was originally in line to be the China director, but Flynn gave him the more senior job of Asia director. Despite being new to civilian government, Pottinger outlasted many others in Trump's White House. In September 2019, Pottinger was named Deputy National Security Advisor, second only to NSA advisor Robert O'Brien. Remember, people, at the time, the guy running the CIA is none other than former Secretary of State, Trust Kansas. Help me out here. How am I forgetting a name that important? I'll come back to it. Pottinger is best known as a China hawk, but a smart and sophisticated one. He's been ahead of the curve, calling out China's increasingly aggressive geopolitical stance, articulating this challenge with near perfect eloquence. As Politico writes, while hawks like Bannon love his tough views toward China, even Democrats call his views basically mainstream. Still, some foreign policy experts wonder what a nice guy like him is doing in a place like this. Mike Pompeo is running the CIA. Thank you. Sorry I forgot that name earlier. He's a very effective bureaucratic player because he grew up as one, which is saying something because he's never had a policy job before. The New York Times agreed. Matt has an extraordinary sense of caution that let's not push something unless the president clearly has approved it. This is different from other members of White House staff, the Washington Post admired. So he's pretty much a career bureaucrat from a bureaucrat family, according to this, so far. You understand why I wanted to bring this up?
Continue, please.
While many Trump administration officials have floundered since Trump left the White House, these things are going well for Pottinger. That subject matter expertise, plus the patina afforded by resigning on January 6th, has helped Pottinger, a former journalist, expertly navigate the post-Trump landscape. He even emerged as the White House hero of the initial COVID-19 chaos and New Yorker writer Lawrence Wright's chronicle of the plague year. The plague that actually wasn't a plague. One reason that Pottinger was welcomed back into the establishment is that unlike some of Trump's unconventional appointees, he had already been part of the elite. So the guy bails on Trump on January 6th. Oh my God, we can't have a fake insurrection. So now we know where his loyalties are, and they're celebrating the fact that he was already been part of the elite. So that's who we're talking about. From the center right to the center left and to the far right to the far left, it's tough to find anyone on the Beltway short on praise for Matt Pottinger. Guy you've never heard of, right?
Hmm.
And you're pretty politically astute, Doug, right?
I thought I was, but this is someone I have no knowledge of.
That's why we're doing this. Everything about Pottinger is silky smooth. Between the lines of glowing coverage are not so subtle winks and nudges that he'd make an excellent candidate for higher office.
Before you go on, let me make a comment here. This helps kind of put forth kind of something I've been saying. And I know we all kind of know this, but I don't think we realize the severity of it. For the people who stand against a constitutional republic, who stand against liberty, who stand against God-given rights, these people, you can give them whatever label you want, left, progressive, socialist, collectivist, whatever. Understand something. They don't have principles. They don't have an ideology. They don't have anything but one thing. There's only one thing that is on the table, ever. They will play that there's other things there. But in the end, it comes down to one thing and one thing over only.
Can I name it?
Power.
That's the word I was going to say.
Power. That's it. It's all about power. Take down anyone who may interfere with that journey. And I've been saying this since day one about Donald J. Trump. The reason why they hate him so much is because he was a stick in the spokes. What happens when you stick a stick in the spokes? It crashes. The wheel stops turning and everything crashes. And that was unforgivable. Okay, go ahead, sir.
We're in 100% agreement on what you just said, and I've been saying something similar in my own way, but we are absolutely on the same page. And had I been able to jump in, you're going to say there's one thing, and I would have said the word power. This is the managerial class. This is the Fabian socialist dream. This is how they wanted to infiltrate all the institutions and put the managerial people in town. It is the state against the people, and that is not what the Constitution said. The state was supposed to be limited. It got out of control. And this is why Doug and I despise Hamilton so much, because he opened the door to the slippery slope. And it just kept getting worse, and it has been for more than 200 years.
He in a sense was a serpent in the garden. He got it all rolling. He got it all started, and everything rolled downhill from there.
You either have a government that has specific enumerated limited powers, or you have a slippery slope. Read between the lines. And once you start the slippery slope, it never stops. And now you create the opportunity for people who want for their own interests are going to put their own politicians and their own bureaucrats in place to benefit themselves financially. Once you open the door one crack, it will always end in autocracy. And this is what this guy Pottinger is. He's the ultimate result of autocracy, the bureaucratic state working against us for the sake
Right.
of the state, and they will protect themselves at all costs. And there's a reason that 94% of Washington, D.C. votes Democrat, because it has become the party of the state. All right, continuing. In 2020, ratcheting up alarm via asymptomatic spread. In January 2020, Pottinger unilaterally called meetings. This is a national security advisor, sub-level guy, unilaterally calling meetings and ratcheted up alarm about the new coronavirus in the White House based on information from his own sources in China, despite having no official intelligence to back up his alarmism, breaching protocol on several occasions. Starting to get the plot here, people?
And as Sons of Liberty so eloquently put it in the chat, the enemy domestic. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
In Washington, Pottinger was first made aware of the new coronavirus after China's CDC director called U.S. CDC Director Robert Redfield, who came out as a hero, by the way, to report it on January 3rd, 2020. According to Pottinger, he grew increasingly alarmed due to the rumors he saw on Chinese social media. He was struck by the disparity between official accounts and the novel coronavirus in China, which scarcely mentioned the disease, and Chinese social media, which was aflame with rumors and anecdotes. So we've got a guy whose father was a deep state spook, reading Chinese social media and setting U.S. policy based on Chinese social media. Just want to let that hang there for a second. Pottinger therefore authorized the first interagency meeting on the coronavirus based on these social media reports. There was no official intelligence to prompt the meeting. On January 14th, 2020, Pottinger authorized a briefing of the National Security Council staff by the State Department and the Department of DHS, along with CDC Director Redfield. That first interagency meeting to discuss the situation in Wuhan wasn't prompted by official intelligence. In fact, there was practically none of that. It was Pottinger reading Chinese social media. Let me hammer that home. On January 27, 2020, Trump's staff attended the first full meeting on the coronavirus in the White House Situation Room. Unbeknownst to those in attendance, Pottinger had unilaterally called the meeting. Pottinger, a deputy of the NSC, is calling a meeting in the White House Situation Room. Others urged calm, but Pottinger immediately began pushing for travel bans. As Abudaleb writes, few people in the room knew it, but Pottinger had actually called the meeting. The Chinese weren't providing the U.S. government much information about the virus, and Pottinger didn't trust what they were disclosing anyways. He had spent 2 weeks scouring Chinese social media feeds and had uncovered dramatic reports of the new infectious disease, suggesting that it was much worse than the Chinese government had revealed. He had also seen reports that the virus might have escaped from a lab in Wuhan, China. There were too many unanswered questions. He told everyone in the Situation Room that they needed to consider enacting a travel ban immediately, ban all travel from China, shut it down. This guy who was stationed in China for 7 years as a quote-unquote journalist after being an intel worker in Afghanistan and Iraq, and whose father was a career spook for the CIA, is the one making these calls. See any problems with this yet, Doug?
Oodles and oodles. Keep going.
Pottinger spent. There's a reason I wanted to come on tonight and share
Right.
this story, this article.
Right.
It's brilliant research, and it's accurate. I've checked all this stuff. Pottinger spent several days calling some of his old contacts in China. Oh, really? Doctors who would tell him the truth. Uh-huh. and they told him that things were bad and only going to get worse. Pottinger's discourse was measured, but he conveyed the gravity of the threat. He said that the virus was spreading fast. He said that dramatic actions would need to be taken, which is why the government should consider banning travel from China to the United States until it had a better understanding of what was going on.
And you had Birx and Fauci and the media there,
Well, Birx,
almost like on a runway, going, "What he said, what he said."
just wait. It's we're gonna get they're not in the picture yet. Yet. They're gonna come quickly.
Okay.
And you're right. He said that blah, blah, blah. As he continued, people sat up in their chairs. This was not a "we've got everything handled" message that Azar had conveyed just minutes earlier. Azar was one of the Trump's uh, secretaries of something or other. As Wright documents, the health officials thought travel restrictions would be futile. Predictably, the public health representatives were resistant too. Viruses found ways to travel no matter what. Moreover, at least 14,000 passengers from China were arriving in the U.S. every day. There was no feasible way to quarantine them all. These arguments would join a parade of other public health verities that would be jettisoned during the pandemic. Remember, China shut down all travel from Wuhan
Hmm.
to other Chinese provinces, but allowed Wuhan passengers to still travel to the West? Okay. Among those present, Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney appears to have been the only one to express skepticism of Pottinger's information. Mulvaney threatened to intervene. Mulvaney intervened to wrap things up. He could tell that Pottinger and a few others were calling for a dramatic change, one that was an anathema to his libertarian instincts. I wouldn't call Mulvaney a libertarian, but whatever. He was pretty skeptical of Pottinger's sources, in quotes, in China, too. They weren't going to be setting U.S. policy based on what someone had heard from their friend thousands of miles away. Mulvaney reiterated that they would reconvene the next day to discuss matters again before anything was settled. He wanted attendees not to leak any details of the meeting to the media. Do I need to check anything in the chat, or are people enjoying this?
Now that well, I'm getting good information tonight, so keep on rolling. Um, Go ahead.
This will take up a bit of time, but we need to get through this. We have to get to
Right.
Birx because this is the big topic you put out in your email, and I definitely wanted to be on the show to share this with you.
Okay.
Good enough?
Absolutely.
I hope I don't mess up your whole program plan.
No, not at all.
This is the kind of stuff that I've been sitting on, dying for this opportunity. The next morning, January 28th, 2020, Pottinger says he spoke to a doctor in China who told him the new coronavirus would be as bad as the 1918 Spanish flu and that half the cases were asymptomatic.
Now, understand something before you go on here, audience. I want you to hear this. So, my wife and I began watching. I had just finished it this morning. The mini series for The Stand. The most recent version of it was completed and put out there March of 2020. Interesting timing. It began filming in September of 2019, prior to all of this. And we had all of these films in the last decade or two, Contagion and Flu and you know the list goes on and on and on, that deals with this kind of, you know, and so we have been conditioned to expect something like what they were trying to pull on us. So when he said, "Oh, it's going to be as bad as," and we've been conditioned to go, "Oh, we see it coming," because we already don't think that, you know, that we're going to live to a ripe old age because, you know, climate change and, you know, and the list goes on and on, right? Everything is doomsday. And so not only is this stuff sinister, but everybody had been conditioned for that perfect timing.
Yeah, let's talk.
It was the perfect storm from
Yeah, let's talk.
from that point of view.
Let's talk about that timing. What's going on at the time? We had just had the George Floyd. We hadn't
Mm-hmm.
had George Floyd riots yet, but those would follow. and it would follow. Apparently, everyone else had
Well,
to
you
be
did have
locked
all
down.
the anti-Trump riots and MAGA people being hunted down, and
That, that
college
came
camps. All.
it came 2 months later at the George Floyd riots.
Hmm.
In which case, apparently, COVID doesn't spread if you're in a Walmart or protesting for Black Lives Matter, but everyone else has to be locked down or wearing a mask, or lose your job, lose your business, or you're kicked out of the military. And of course, we have to have universal mail-in ballots, and all of these
Hmm.
things are connected. Each one of these events was used to cover up a previous event. That's the message. I mean, that's the plot here. So let me just give away the ending. This was done on purpose. U.S. intelligence agencies were involved. Pottinger was the agent who was in the focal point at the National Security Council inside the White House, pushing all these things. And he's citing, oh, I talked to a friend who's a doctor in China, and that's the basis for all of this. And that, people, is absolutely freaking nonsense. And by the way, they killed my parents, so fuck them. Excuse my language. You can tell I might be a little upset about that. The next morning, Pottinger had a conversation with a very high-level doctor in China. Oh, so he's not connected to the Chinese CCP. We can trust him. One who had spoken with health officials in several provinces, including Wuhan. This is a trusted source who is in a position to know the ground truth. Is this going to be as bad as SARS in 2003? He asked the doctor, whose name must remain secret for his own protection. Forget SARS in 2003, the doctor replied. This is 1918. Spanish influenza. Which, by the way, one thing they realized out of 1918 was that masks don't work. Every single medical study from 1919 through 2019, 100 years, came to the conclusion that masks don't work. Those surgical masks, what they call the NR or whatever, the NS13, those have a little bit of efficacy. But at the end of the day, I was going, I'm sitting there going into a grocery store, looking at somebody who's got a bandana over their face with enough gap in their mouth that a hummingbird could fly through it. And I'm saying to myself, there's no way in hell that's going to stop a virus. So, and the reason surgeons wear masks, by the way, is so they don't sneeze and accidentally infect the patient. That's what they're good
It's
for.
for water droplets.
Yes, which are much bigger than little virus droplets.
Right.
It's a
Yeah. Well,
joke.
as I've told people, wearing a mask is like trying to stop, when it comes to viruses, is like trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence.
Yes, that's my favorite analogy as well, or a tennis racket, same thing. But Doug, Fauci then would come out and tell us if you wear two masks, it'll work pretty well. I mean, people dumb enough to believe that, and we have to share our country with these people, and they will defend it to this day, and it's a problem. That is a brainwashing we are dealing with. I mean, that's big picture. This was politicized from day one, and that's a problem. National health should never be politicized. You know, look, if there's a virus out there that my elderly parents who were in their 70s and were very healthy were in danger of, I would have protected them. But not wearing a mask, not wearing a chain link fence or anything like that. And and the public health officials, they have one duty and one duty only, and that's to give us the best and most accurate information so we can make informed decisions as free citizens of America. That's what a public health official should be doing. And they did the opposite in blanket. I mean, throughout the, not just the country, throughout the world, everybody who works in this whole national health institutions and stuff like that, they parroted this party line, mask up. Yeah, and we talked about Jim Brewer, the comedian. Trust the science. Trust the science. It was ridiculous.
Hmm.
It was the
The
biggest psyop
parody. Yeah.
ever done in the world. They murdered people, and they cannot be forgiven for this ever. There must be accountability. I want my reckoning. So we're going to continue.
You want your pound of flesh.
I'll never stop till we get it. You met my father and my mother.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
They
Matter of
were
fact,
great.
I don't know if you remember, your father and I took a nice walk because he was getting ready to go on a walk. I said, "Well, I'll go with you." And it was just he and I. He went on his walk and with the dog, and I was with him, and we just talked for however long that walk was, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was, and great respect for the man. And when it comes to the masks and the shots and all that, And I'm sure 90% of you out there have heard these stories, but let me say this real quick. Um, I never wore a mask. I think I put one on my face 5 or 6 times, and it lasted about 5 seconds before I took it off. It was to get through a door or something, raise it, drop it, right? Um, my wife wore a mask at work because if she didn't, she'd lose her job. Otherwise, she didn't wear a mask, except for a handful of times in stores because she knew they required it. I would get kicked out. She would shop. Sometimes they still wouldn't serve her because she was with me. That was beside the point. Neither one of us got a single shot. And I had a conversation with my sister-in-law, and she says, and understand, my wife's the oldest of 7 girls. Her 6 sisters are all libtard crazy, but this one in particular, she'll at least talk to you without being a complete wackadoodle, and she'll at least consider what you have to say. And she says to me, she lives at home with Virginia's mom, and she says to me, "Now let me get this straight, Doug. You and Virginia didn't wear masks, and you never got the shot." And I said, "Right." She says, "Me and mom wore masks almost 24/7, all the time, everywhere we went, got all the shots, all the boosters, and we got COVID 3 times. I never got COVID. I thought I might have the December before all of this broke loose because I had a respiratory infection, but it was probably, well, a respiratory infection. But, and so I'm a firm believer that the vaccine was one of the tools to give the infection. And then
That's a
the other thing was this. If it was what they said it was, where were the bodies in the streets? Everybody died
well,
while under care.
yeah, I don't know if this article is going to talk about that, but you hear people talking about the sovereign alliance theory that Putin and Z and Trump are all
Mm-hmm.
working to break the whole globalist system, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I get the argument behind it. My good friends at Badlands Media are all behind that, and I've asked them, and I was on Badlands Media a couple of weeks ago with a good friend Gordon, goes to base Patrick Henry. And I said, okay, great. What I want to see is evidence that China's been a good actor in any way, shape, or form, because they did the COVID stuff like this. They're sending 600,000 people to our universities. They're stealing our intellectual property and everything like that. But most importantly, I remember the videos China sent to us in February of 2020 that showed people dropping dead on the streets from COVID. And that's not how COVID works. Nobody dropped dead from the streets. But they sent that propaganda to us, those videos of us that were blasted on mainstream media that got people scared out of their, scared to death. China did that under Z. So don't give me the sovereign alliance unless you can justify that to me. They did that. That absolutely happened. That was pure propaganda video straight out of Joseph Goebbels. And I'm not forgiving it for 1 second.
Right. 100% agreement.
All right, let's get back. Let's get let's get through the article.
Edge Stomp in the chat room. Thank God for plexiglass.
Plexiglass saved my life. If not for that, I wouldn't be here, except for the plexiglass stopped here and there was a six. The virus isn't smart enough to go underneath the plexiglass. Yeah.
Well, and actually, because of just basic physics, what would happen is then it would do this and then swirl around.
Yeah. My favorite was there's two favorites. There's the curfew. You can't go out after 11 p.m. because COVID comes out at night, apparently, and during the day it's okay. But the other really fun one, what's the other really fun one? Really crap. Oh, the diagrams at the bank. You have two lines 3 feet apart with 6 foot spots in the ground, making you 6 feet apart in single file. But the person to
They're
your
three
left
feet,
is
but
only
they're
three
three
feet
feet
away
apart.
because the COVID virus wasn't smart enough to make a left turn.
And then, of
And
course,
people,
there's the 6 feet in particular. Virus, the way a one gentleman who went to microbiology school explained it to me, as viruses in the air, they operate like smoke. 6 feet? No, it's like what happens with smoke in a room?
and Fauci admitted they just made up the 6 foot thing,
Yeah.
admitted it. And yet the entire freaking country and half the world actually put tape down on the floor or worse, stuff like that. And I was living in the same, thankfully, the reason I survived this stuff, so with a little bit of mental health left and not going completely batshit crazy, was that's right when I met Doug and he was teaching that Constitution class, and I met 20 or 30 awesome, awesome patriots and people that said hell no at the same time I did.
Yeah.
And
Great
we
group.
were,
Great group. We're still
yeah,
in touch.
oh, absolutely. And it's a darn shame you didn't meet us in Southern Cal. You owe us all one trip. So, yeah, we'd go into the grocery stores all together, 20 of us at a time, and say, good luck arresting us all. And it didn't happen. So we were pushing back. And for those of you who aren't in California, we had the lockdowns about as bad as anybody. And all right, so let's get back to the I want to get through the article and we're getting short on
Okay.
time. You can see me?
I can see it.
Doctor told Pottinger half the cases were asymptomatic and the government must have known all about it. Later that day, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien brought Pottinger in the Oval Office, where he seized the first opportunity to repeat to the president what the doctor in China, unnamed, told him that morning. This is the single greatest national security crisis of your presidency, and it's now unfolding. It's going to be 1918. Holy fuck, the president replied. Wright goes into more detail on this meeting, in which Pottinger interjected the alarm to the president. Later that day, the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, brought O'Brien into the Oval Office where the president was blah, 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 getting president's daily briefing. Far down the list of threats was the mysterious new virus in China. The briefer didn't seem to take it seriously. O'Brien did. So O'Brien's taking it seriously. This will be the single business national security threat. So you understand what's going on.
And when you surround yourself with quote unquote experts and you don't have access, but they do, and you're in this bureaucratic bubble, I don't care who you are, you're like, holy cow, you err on the side of caution. And this is where, a lot of people, they hammer on Trump. You got to remember, he's going by what he knew. And so I do give him a little bit of a pass because he's getting his information erroneously. Now, that said, my biggest complaint has been he hasn't said, okay, I was fooled. I screwed up. It wasn't the greatest thing that we did with Operation Light Speed or whatever it
warp,
was.
sp-
Warp Speed. Thank you.
that
Um,
that comes later. That
okay.
comes later. And you're making a great point, Doug. Um, but I do want to point out what Trump did say in January. Still, he did the State of the Union address, and he said that COVID is going to be the next great Democrat hoax. And he didn't say the virus was a hoax. He said the response will be a hoax. He
Hmm.
knew what was going on, and he
Okay.
called it out. And yet his actions were anything other than what I give him the limited that I know. I mean,
Yeah.
I would shut the damn thing down, but we'll see. We don't know the whole truth of what he
And,
means.
we weren't on the inside, so we don't know where the handcuffs were attached to him in a sense, philosophically and bureaucratically and all that. So there's always more going on than what you see on the outside. It's easy to be a Sunday morning quarterback
All right, let's keep. We got about 25
or
minutes. I need to
armchair
get.
quarterback. Sorry, that's what I meant.
January 23rd, China announced it was locking down Wuhan, a city of 11 million people, blah, blah, blah. The Chinese were rapidly building an entire hospital in Wuhan that was completed within days. In bold, if the virus had brought the world's most populous country to a standstill, some top U.S. officials, especially Pottinger, knew they should be doing more. All right, I want to get down to the Birx stuff. So go ahead and talk for a second. All right, so here we get to the fun part.
Yeah, I Dream Walking says I never wore a mask at all. I refused. I did too, and there was a couple times I put one on because I just kind of had to in the situation, and I started getting vertigo. So I went to the VA to find out why putting on a mask would give me vertigo, just because not because of any reason other than like what's going on here, but they wouldn't let me in unless I'm wearing a mask. I said, well, I can't wear a mask. It gives me vertigo. Well, you have to wear a mask. Come in to find out why. That's the stupidest thing. They finally allowed me to take a back elevator in the back of the building, service elevator, so I wouldn't endanger everybody because I wouldn't wear a mask. And then I get to the top floor, and the woman's behind two plexiglass, has two masks on, gloves. I just, but anyway, all right, go
I
ahead.
continue. This is an important paragraph. Concerned about the political implications, Mulvaney tried to rein in Pottinger. He took O'Brien aside and told him, "You've got to get Pottinger under control." The sky is falling. The sky is falling. Pottinger is Chicken Little.
All right.
Pottinger was too young, Mulvaney said, and too immature to be Deputy National Security Advisor, and too conflicted. Mulvaney was among the most skeptical of all the White House officials that the virus threat was real. In late February, as the markets tanked, Mulvaney said the media was exaggerating the threat in an effort to bring down President Trump, calling it the quote-unquote hoax of the day. As he prepared the White House first budget to respond to the emerging crisis, Mulvaney pegged the total cost at $800 million. Mulvaney was pushed out in early March. Interesting. 2. Pottinger's crusade for universal masking. In February 2020, Pottinger, who has no background in science or public health, began a months-long campaign to popularize universal masking and travel quarantines in response to the coronavirus based on information from his own sources in China. China. This isn't coming from Fauci, it's coming from Pottinger, people, who's getting his information from China.
From an enemy that wants to destroy us. But we'll believe him. Yeah. Okay.
The same enemy that actually had serious business dealings with the Biden family.
Well, it's like I
They
told
had
people during the scamdemic too. We know that politicians lie. We know that basically you can't trust most of these large corporations. But yet suddenly when they're working together, it's all true. Hmm.
Pottinger, wearing a mask, began to work in early March to convince the White House colleagues to take up the practice. Pottinger is the father of masking. A mask, however, could significantly stem transmission, Pottinger argued. If people's noses and mouths were covered, they would emit far fewer respiratory droplets. This guy has no science background, but he's the one setting the policy. He begins wearing a mask to work early in March, but he didn't wear a simple cloth mask covering. He wore what other White House aides thought was a gas mask. He looked like a lunatic. Some snickered, and it reinforced his reputation as an alarmist. One staffer described him as being at 100 as early January on a scale of 1 to 10. Having lived in China during the SARS outbreak, he saw the importance, blah, blah, blah. All right, I want to get down to Birx, so because we're short on time for the rest of the article, and I'll post the link in the chat here, people, because he's also tied to a gentleman by the name of Who was the vice president? Yeah. Oh wait, did I go? I need to go further down. Hang on. Appointing Deborah. What did I miss here in number 3? 2. Popularizing shutdowns. Pottinger popularized shutdowns within the White House using a dubious study on the 1918 flu pandemic, comparing outcomes between Philadelphia and St. Louis a month before the study, blah, blah, blah. So that's all garbage again, coming from Pottinger. Beginning in January 2020, Pottinger begins petitioning Deborah Birx to be appointed the White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator. Birx then embarked on a months-long scorched earth campaign for lockdowns that were as long and strict as possible across the United States. I'm going to stop there on this article, Doug, so you can get some chat in, but you understand the reason I've shared this.
Yeah, and I actually took a screenshot so that I had the link, but definitely put it in the chat. Uh, and you know,
In the chat right now.
and one of the chatters, Edge Thump, said something interesting. Uh, if Fauci would have issued ivermectin kits to everyone like Asian countries do, it would be over. It would have been over. Yeah. But the reason why ivermectin became the bad guy, hydroxychloroquine became the bad guy, and was because if it worked, it would make Trump look good because he mentioned it. And once again, the truth didn't matter, principles didn't matter. What mattered? Power. And removing the person that was in the way of their power, Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump, when he said, "It's not me they're after, it's you, I'm just in their way," that was one of the most accurate statements he has ever made. It was exactly on target. That's what it was all about. Um, and the problem is, though, is that when you have this movement, this ideology, it's all about power. It's not and this is something Brady and I could talk about, goes all the way back to Fabians and further back. It's not just some political party or some political group or some political ideology. This is a collectivist, communist, socialist, Hamiltonian, you can throw all the labels you want, that has permeated into the deepest crevices of our system. Some of us call it the deep state. You can also say media, entertainment, education, academia, if you want to use that word. And the list goes on and on and on. So it's not just some movement, political movement. It is at the heart and soul of our, it's permeated everywhere. It's like having a poison that will trigger at a certain time, moving through the bloodstream into every cell of your body and then waiting for whatever the command is.
Well,
That's
Doug,
what it is. And this was their opportunity, because here's the thing. Let me finish this statement and then or this thought, and then it's all yours, sir. Uh, I've been talking about what I'm just saying, what I'm saying, try to say saying and said at the same time, since the 80s. I was warning about this all the way back. I have believed this because I read history, and I knew it was going to get deeper and worse. They have been working on it a lot longer than I've been alive. But see, when Hillary and Obama were on the scene, something had happened that had never happened for them before. They thought they saw the light at the end of the tunnel, the completion of their project. And that goes back to what I said earlier about the stick in the spokes. And so when a stick is stuck in your spokes and you saw the light at the end of the tunnel, you get desperate. You are going to do whatever it takes. And this had been in the plans all along, but it hadn't been, the pin hadn't been pulled on it because they didn't think they needed it. But the moment Donald J. Trump stuck a stick in their spokes, they had all kinds of hand grenades lined up, and they started pulling pins out of desperation. I just hope that there's enough breadcrumbs scattered around that we can start putting these people away, and the average normal person out there can understand the depth and breadth of it all.
and
I
this is
don't
not
know
a
if that's
right
the
wing.
case.
This is not a right wing, left wing argument. It's not a Republican versus Democrat. This is crimes against humanity. This is a international uh, syndicate. This is a network of people that basically thrust this upon us. Um, and they were so well organized. I mean, you look at every single one of your health officials, they were on board. How many doctors, all of academia was on board with this. Every doctor, besides the few brave souls that stood up and lost their jobs, um, basically went along with it. They got handsomely rewarded because your politicians gave them money, because if someone died from COVID, even though they're killed in a car wreck, if you could check it off as COVID, the hospital gets more money. This is one of the biggest scams in the history of humanity. I want to just give you the rest of the highlights of this article, just because we don't want to leave it out. But we'll go quickly. He appoints Deborah Birx. By the way, Doug, do you recall Deborah Birx getting a pardon? Why is she not in front of Congress right this second?
Yeah, interesting.
All right, we go down to the next highlight. Promoting mass testing. Yeah, that was Pottinger too. These stupid tests, which obviously had error rates that were off the charts. And we knew that like within weeks of the tests coming out. And yeah, I'm not going to let some guy in a parking lot put a needle anywhere near my brain, by the way. Number 6, he endorsing remdesivir, which is proven to be deadly, while they're burying hydroxychloroquine, the horse paste. Number 7, pushing intelligence to believe COVID came from a lab. That was the whole Fauci stuff that he was supposed to be testifying on. But Birx is involved in all of this. I mean, all this is on this article. It's a wonderfully written article. It's got all the facts correct. I fact checked it. But this was the biggest assault on our freedoms in history. And think about the people in the military that didn't have a choice once Biden got into office, illegitimately. I mean, I have a friend who was a 19-year helicopter pilot and had to leave a year early because he was not going to do that to his family. How much did he lose? He's going to do fine. Helicopter pilots are in high demand in Southern California, but all these patriots. Think about these people that work for, corporations who are just trying to provide for their families.
Mm-hmm.
That they had to reinvent themselves. Fired for cause, that sort of thing. Think about the kids that couldn't get into school. Think about the under 18, with the 2 years of their lives that were stolen, the developmental years. You're playing sports. You have 2 years. They actually, I mean,
Yeah,
the clown world
there
stuff.
was a girl on TV the other day, and she says, "I got 1 year of high school, 1 year, graduated on a computer screen."
Yeah, it's some of the worst stuff I've ever seen, Doug. Then how do you respond to something like that when you've got every single one of the institutions internationally trying to impose something instinctively is bullshit? You know what you do? You start going to Constitution class and you start meeting like-minded people and you rise up and you say no more. In my neighborhood in Southern California, in San Diego, they took down the basketball rims. Yeah, at my local court. I like to shoot hoops after I lift weights just to make sure I keep my flexibility. Right next door to that is a skate park. They put sand in the skate park. They arrested paddleboarders. They arrested people that were having lunch just because they wanted to look at the ocean. They tried to destroy us. They tried to demoralize us. It's the worst thing that America has ever done to Americans. It's worse than Lincoln's tyranny when he basically created the Civil War. It is the worst thing that's ever happened, and they expect us to go on and pretend it didn't happen. And Dr. Anthony Fauci and the media is sitting there trying to defend him. This wise old man, why are you picking on him? Because he fucking killed my parents. So go to hell, media. I am not done with this. We are not done. This is just getting started. And Dr. Deborah Birx and this guy Matthew Pottinger don't have auto pen pardons. So let's go get them. Let's get the truth out there. There is no statute of limitations on crimes against humanity, and that's what these freaking people did. All right. I'm sorry. I'll settle down from here.
Yeah, no, and I totally get it. I don't get it from your emotions, but I get it in a general sense, and I understand that we've been lied to. This is just not to make it lighter to lighten it at all, but this is one in a long list of crimes against humanity that they keep trying. I tell people it's like someone who doesn't know how to play darts, but they want to eventually hit the bullseye, and they just keep throwing darts. They don't know what they're doing, but they just keep throwing darts. They figure eventually they'll hit the dartboard, and maybe eventually they'll hit a bullseye. That's what they do. They just keep throwing darts until eventually they hope to hit the bullseye, and they destroy lives. January 6th is a great example. They destroy people's lives. They kill people. And when I say they, you can put they anywhere you want. When it's the collectivistic, anti-constitution, anti-liberty, anti what's right versus wrong crowd. 100 million people died during the 20th century because of communism alone. How many more people died in because of this collectivistic lust for power that we didn't count?
Yeah, and P Dizzle 1683 says, I lost everything. I barely made it through it. Tara Saker says, don't be sorry. You have every reason to be angry. We all do what
Mm-hmm.
they've stolen from us. They've stolen our birthright. We are Americans. Our government doesn't do to us. We do to our government. We need to take that shit back. And look, not everyone got it right immediately, but we all figured it out. If you're watching this show, I almost guarantee you got it right. You figured it out. You're on the right side. And it's not just COVID. There's so many other attacks. This is an entire system of government, multinational, international government suppression trying to take away our God-given natural rights. And that's what we're here to stand up for. The reason we do these shows is to give you the information you need to fight back. But to hell with these people. To hell with them. Not on our watch. We
You
are
know, I've
not
said,
going to give up our liberties. They try to steal our liberties from us, and that is not okay.
and I used to say this at my classes. I'm sure you remember this, and I'll tell you, audience, because I would have people come to me and say all the time, "Wow, Doug, I really learned a lot." And I said, "Okay, great. So what are you gonna do with it? What are you gonna do with it? Because I can't do it for you. We can't do all the work for the cause. It takes all of us. Liberty is not a spectator sport. We got to be on the field, all of us, in one way or another. I remember there was a student in my class of Fallbrook one time. He says, and by the way, this gentleman passed away earlier this year, and he says to me, "Hey, I'm not that. I'm not like you. I can't talk to people. I don't." I said, "Well, there's always something. Go stuff envelopes for somebody. There's something all of us can do, even if it's just talking to your family, even if it's just going to give your 3 minutes at a city council meeting. And if you could run, do it, because you know what? The good people don't run because we know what a mess it is. But you know who will always run? Those seeking power and those seeking to bury us. And if we aren't willing to get into the mix and put our voices out there, put our fists into the ring, then the fight never happens, and we are buried before we even realize what's happening. And for a lot of people, I use my wife sometimes as an example. My wife she and I will be celebrating 42 years marriage in a couple weeks, August 18th. And it's only been the last 2, maybe 3 years that we've been evenly yoked from a Christian point of view. And she will watch these things with me or listen to me talk on these shows. Say, I don't get it, Doug. How is it people don't see it? Did you see it 5 years ago, 10 years ago? No. Why? Because I didn't believe it, because I was busy. There's all kind. We need to stop being those people. Let's have an epiphany, and let's realize that politics affects everything. These people that are out there, the they that we talk about, are not out for just for political power. They are out to conquer us. They are out to destroy us. They are out to kill us. We need to act like our lives depend on it, because they do. And I can't say that strongly enough. And all of us have different skill sets. I have run for office. I'm a heck of a writer. I get into debates. Sometimes I do well, sometimes not. I would rather write about it. That's my strength. Some of us are better at other things. Some of us are involved in our churches. Some of us are the rock in our family. Whatever it is, do more of it. And then add to it, do more. Because this is, once again, this is not a spectator sport. It takes all of us. I hate saying it that way because that's what the NFL says when it comes to their woke stuff, but really it does. It takes all of us.